Everybody, and welcome to another sketch video, sketch of the week. This week we're doing Sir Ian McKellen as Gandalf during his big scene where he faces the Balrog on the bridge and says the famous line, "You shall not pass." So looking at his face just in general, he's got a pretty big nose. He also has really small kind of beady eyes, but in um, in the case of this presence, his expression, which is always in play with these things, he's going to have one eye open a little bit more than the other one. His head shape is quite obscured actually um, by his beard. So, but he has a he has kind of a wide forehead, and I think you see in a lot of cases when you see caricatures of him. Um, like one eye is going to be a lot bigger than the other one here. That he has got quite a large forehead. But in this particular case, I think I'm going to give him a wide but shorter forehead. I just think that there's so much of the action is being pulled down by his rather large nose and also his kind of really interesting mouth shape. He's kind of got his mouth is really pooched out, like his bottom lip is sort of pooched out, and he's got, only his bottom teeth are showing, and that creates kind of like his really interesting sort of expression that he's got when he does this. And one of the eyes, like I said, is bigger than the other one and a little bit more open. And he's got kind of these watery eyes. And if you watch him on film, you see that his eyes twitch, like the bottom part of his eye twitches back and forth. It's really kind of weird how it works. But yeah, he's got a pretty big nose, and I'm not so sure I'm going to really exaggerate that all that much. But the big thing with this is capturing this moment. This is the same story with all of these famous movie moment sort of thing. It isn't, the caricature part, of course, is the idea, but really you're exaggerating and caricaturing the expression as much as you do the person. So I'm going to give him a shorter forehead here and a little bit more weight with the beard and everything coming down. So I'm just going to kind of rough in some of his hair here. I kind of have to draw his hands, kind of doing the thing where they're holding the sword, right? And the staff, because he does that thing where he lifts him up and then sort of smashes the staff down. And in this particular scene, he's lifts him up and crosses them kind of together. And I don't want to go too far off. I don't want to go off the top of the page here. He's got kind of this jewel at the top of his staff. So I'll draw the staff. I'll draw the fingers around it here. The Lord of the Rings was kind of a big deal for me. As a kid, I loved the books. And in fact, I actually taught a class, believe it or not, on the Lord of the Rings in high school. We had a kind of creative writing class that was mostly about science fiction, fantasy kind of stuff, and I had done a essay or something on the Lord of the Rings trilogy, or double books. It was not a trilogy; it was only two books, right? And well, I guess it was three books. Yeah, Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, and Return of the King. And the teacher had me teach a class about it to the rest of the students. So I was pretty familiar with the books. And so when the movies came out, it was a big deal for me. I really did was really looking forward to that and to seeing how they brought it to life on the screen. And I'm one of those people that can easily separate books from films. They're not the same medium, so I don't need to have a book or a film 100% faithfully capture um, every nuance of a book. That's like almost impossible to do. If they try to do it, it makes for a bad movie most of the time. But there are certain things that are too important to change. Like if you change something so much that the characters just are no longer the characters that are in the book, then that's a failure, I think, of the filmmaker. And so with the Lord of the Rings, I thought Peter Jackson did a fantastic job of bringing the essence of the Tolkien books to the big screen. Part of it was casting. I mean, Sir Ian McKellen as Gandalf is unbelievable. He's the perfect choice. I couldn't imagine now anybody else playing Gandalf other than him. And but a lot of it was the choices he made, like the things that were important that he kept in, and the things that he changed. So a lot of Tolkien fans were pissed off about Arwen. That was uh, Liv Tyler's role, the elf, um, daughter of Elrond, who they thought, she had a much bigger role in the film, and they actually had her replace an elf from the Lord named Glorfindel in some of the plot. She was the one that rescued Frodo from the uh, the last charge of the ring wraiths at the Fords of Bruin, right on the borders of um, Rivendell. And so in the books, Glorfindel was the elf lord that found them in the wilderness and managed to help get them to Rivendell without being captured and killed by the ring wraiths. And they had her do it instead. And they're like, a lot of people were upset by that. That was a good move. I mean, Arwen hardly has any role in the books, but she's a kind of an important character because she mirrors another character called Luthien, um, who was another elf maiden who fell in love with a mortal and ended up choosing the mortal life, or mortality rather than elf's immortality because of her love for Beren. And Aragorn and Arwen is a retelling of that story. It's just like they're like them reincarnated, basically. So that was a great move. And so many of the other things that impressed me about it too was that he would work quotes in, that were from the books, but not necessarily spoken by the characters that spoke them in the movie, which I just thought was really brilliant because, these quotes are kind of iconic from the books. Like at the very beginning of the movie, you've got Kate Blanchett's character Galadriel does a little narration where she says, the world is changing. I can feel it in the air. I can smell it in the air. I can feel it in the water or whatever. I can't remember what her quote was. That was a quote from Treebeard in a completely different part of the books, and there's all sorts of examples like that from this movie that I just think was really brilliant. Um, that he would work these things in, and because they're kind of beloved, moments in the books, and that are recognized by book fanatics, and so he worked them in even if they aren't spoken by the actual people that did it in the book. So there's just so many things that worked on so many levels, and I really think that Gandalf is one of the great characters, and was so well cast as with McKellen as the actor. So let's see here. I'm kind of getting a little bit too detailed in my little rough sketch here. I just think I'm gonna kind of do the rest of this a little looser so that I can get to the drawing board here. Try to work the hands out a little bit more though. Now, The Hobbit, on the other hand, that was a case of them just, trying to stretch it out into 3 movies, and some of the ridiculousness of that one was just silly. Took away from the actual story in a number of places, and just tried to add like the weird, love affair sort of thing between the elf, the female elf. I can't even remember the name of her character. It's played by Evangeline Lilly, and one of the dwarves that have got this little sort of romantic kind of connection going, and it's just like, what's the point of that? I mean, that's just silly, and a lot of the plot, stuff that they added so that they could pad out the story long enough for it to be 3 movies was, I think, ridiculous. And Jackson, cut a lot of stuff from the original Lord of the Rings. Like, I gotta make this eye a little bit more squinty here, I think. The very end of the book, of course, is what's called the Scourging of the Shire, and that's the actual book ending is when they go back to the Shire, the hobbits, and find it's been taken over by not orcs really, but sort of these half-orc, evil, kind of half-men sort of creatures that are really just bad regular people. They're not monsters. They're not ogres or orcs or trolls or anything. And the hobbits, of course, after having been through so much with in the world, make quick work of them, and scourge the Shire and raise the hobbits, and it's a nice little ending to the story that just shows these timid characters, these hobbits have grown up and grown into themselves, and they're truly deserving of being among the great in Middle Earth. But Jackson left that one out, and it's it's a great part of the book, but it just didn't need to be in the movie. So anyway, I think this is good enough. So we're gonna move this over to the drawing board here, and I'll get busy on the final sketch. All right, here we go at the drawing board. I've transferred my drawing over here, so let's see if we can get things going on this side. Oh, got kind of a crappy sharp on this one. That's better. So like I said, when I was doing the quick sketch, the expression on this one, where I'm trying to get the 2 different size eyes, like one of his eyes is kind of squinty, but not really squinty. It's just smaller, and it just gives this really lopsided sort of and the eye shapes are kind of weird. One side is higher than the other one in the shape itself. But it's really what creates this expression of his, where he's got one eye sort of squinted down, one eye more open. Get his bushy eyebrows. He's kind of looking up, just a little up at the Balrog, of course, which is huge. I'm not sure how much cross-hatching I really want to do on this one. There's not a lot of dramatic lighting, you know, really, in this one. He's lit, but it's not like there's any really big intense shadows, really. His you know, pretty pronounced bags under his eyes here are going to be important. So I don't quite have him looking up. This is a problem. He's got to be looking up more. Otherwise, we're not really getting that expression. He's looking upward at the Balrog. And, you know, the placement of the pupil and iris makes such a huge difference when it comes to expression. Just the slightest change is all that's necessary to really completely change the focus of the subject and where he's looking, or he or she is looking, and what the expression ends up being like. McKellen's got some pretty strong cheekbones too, really. But he's so hairy in this one, you know, the beard and everything. It's not like a really well-groomed beard. You know, it's kind of wild and sort of all over the place. And that makes it a little bit tougher to draw with line. It's much more conducive to, you know, values sort of thing, because it's so haphazard. And then his hair too is not the easiest kind of hair to draw. It's kind of ribbony, and then if you look, his beard kind of goes in front of it here. Let's work on his mouth here, because this mouth is really going to be important in order to capture this expression. It's not really very open, you know. It's the bottom lip comes down considerably, and you see his crooked bottom teeth. His upper teeth are completely hidden, but this pooching out of the bottom lip is super important. So I'm not going to bring this line all the way to the corner of the mouth, although I never do when I do, especially live caricatures. I never draw the bottom lip all the way to the corner of the mouth. You lose the protrusion of the bottom lip and how it sort of sticks out a little bit more than the upper lip. You lose that if you connect that line to the corner of the mouth. It flattens it all out. And then he's got, like, the corners of his mustache kind of curl around a little bit. It's hard to see because it's just all this white, you know, gray-white hair all over the place, but it's definitely there. Sharpen this up a bit more. When you're drawing somebody and you're trying to use line, and you're drawing somebody that's got like a white beard or a lot of white hair, you have to be careful, you know, how many lines you use, because that ends up reading as darker hair. But you still want to make sure you create the direction and feel of the hair and what's going on. So it becomes kind of a balancing act. You don't want to add too much hair or too many lines, because you don't want the hair to end up looking like it's darker than it really is. But you also want to describe the hair and what it's doing and how it's flowing. And and his hair is very, again, you know, haphazard. It's kind of greasy, and it's got all these flyaways, and it's really fine. It's not like really a thick hair, especially in the scalp areas and all that kind of thing. So yeah, he's actually got a lot of subtle nuances to his face that sort of make it challenging to draw using line. I'm going to take advantage of this cast shadow of his nose here to add a little definition there. I'm pretty much going to stick with the lighting that I see in the original here in this one, as opposed to taking some liberties, which I'll often do when I'm just doing a caricature. I don't feel like I've got to exactly copy the lighting, or just like I don't exactly copy everything about the photograph. I'm obviously I'm going to caricature and exaggerate and change some things to either help the caricature be stronger through exaggeration, or some other elements as far as expression goes. Change the shape of the mouth a little bit, exaggerate the shape of the mouth, because it comes down a little bit more on one side here. Maybe it's a little bit more open on this side. And his mustache is really wispy. Like, he doesn't have a heavy mustache. He's got all these long hairs, but they're all really fine and very, very delicate. So it doesn't help that there isn't like a really strong shape, that's being created by the mustache, and that makes it a little bit more difficult. You can really see how strong his cheekbone is on this side. There's a little bit more shadow going over here that allows the cheekbone to really, that shape to really pop out a lot more. He's got really small nostrils, and he's got this big kind of bulbous nose, but his nostrils aren't very big. More of a shadow on this side than the other. Light source is a little bit coming from this way. So I wasted a lot of time in my preliminary sketch doing the the little lines, or working out some of the cascading kind of ribbons of hair that he's got. Because you can't, it's really hard for me anyway to duplicate that again. When I'm drawing hair, I have to be really loose, and I'm trying to catch the feel of it as much as I am the actual shapes. So I try to, approximate the shapes, but I'm not really drawing all these ribbons of hair exactly the way they are. I'm just trying to create that feel of the hair cascading down, and the ribbons kind of intertwining amongst each other, and trying to create that feeling of this cascading kind of greasy ribbons of hair that aren't too slavishly following exactly what I see on his this actual photo. And at some point the beard is sort of in the way. And the beard, is another thing that's just sort of, it's so fine, and the hairs are just, it doesn't bunch up and gather like, a really heavy beard does. So you have to be more careful with the lines that you use, and trying to be a little bit more delicate with it. When I do my workshops, one of the things that people ask about a lot is hair. And you really, how do you draw hair? It's so difficult to draw. And, it's difficult to draw exactly the way you see it. That's very true, because you're getting confused. People, the artist gets confused. You're trying to think of it in terms of hair. So hair is like millions of little strands, right? And you're not trying to draw. You can't draw those millions of strands. You're never going to be able to do it. I mean, even if you had the finest paintbrush and painted every little strand, what you'd end up with would look unnatural, because what we see as just humans looking at people isn't little hairs. Like, we're not close enough, really to see that. What we see are big shapes that are created by the hairs clumping together and the light and shadow playing off those shapes. So, we're seeing highlights and shadows and bigger shapes being created by these hairs coming together and sticking together and clumping together and then moving apart and all this sort of thing that happens with everybody's hair. So what I tell people, and this is especially true when you're talking about cartooning, like, trying to simplify something as complicated as hair, is you need to think about it in terms of simple shapes as much as possible. And rather than draw, the individual hairs, you're drawing the big shapes that are being created by those hairs. And then you use lines that suggest the texture of the hair. And these lines are really the light and shadow that's happening on these locks of hair. So some hairstyles are a lot easier to capture in line. The ones that are straight or clump pretty close together and create some pretty obvious, very distinct shapes. And those are a lot easier to draw with line, because the shapes are quite obvious, and you're able to draw those shapes with just a few lines, great big sweeping curls for a great big sweeping swoop or whatever that might happen with somebody's hairstyle. And then the light and shadow that happens with that is pretty easy to see. And you've got a definite highlight going on in the middle of the lock or whatever. And it's just a lot easier to capture using simple line, whereas some hairstyles are just really complicated to try to capture. So you have to simplify them as much as you can. And, you're trying to capture the feel of it, really, is what I always say. You're trying to capture the feel of the hair, not every single little strand. McKellen's fingers are also really interesting. He's got, old man hands, which are knobby and whatever, but he has like these little ends that sort of stick out a little bit, even when he's grasping something. Like his pinky kind of sticks out. This finger is way too thick. Oh well. His staff here. I'm taking a lot of liberties with this. I think the crystal is not shaped like a jewel. It's kind of more of a rock crystal shape. Don't really have that in my reference pictures here at all. Didn't bother to look it up, but so you can see, I don't know if you can see this on this picture, but right here there's a big dark area right on the side of his head here, that the hair comes out of his temple, and then it separates down, and you've got this nice dark kind of area right here that And then right on the other side of that lock, there's another really dark area that where you see the texture of the beard starting to happen at the top up by his ear. Maybe made it a little bit too dark, but if you squint your eyes, at your reference, that eliminates all the details that you see, and it kind of gives you an opportunity to see things a little bit more as just general vague, values and whatnot. And that helps a lot. That's an old portrait artist trick, right? To squint your eyes when you're looking at your subject to eliminate the details and just see the basic shapes and it helps to not get distracted by, and then that works so well for any kind of drawing, to squint your eyes at whatever it is that you're drawing, and then you don't get distracted by the little details that are happening all over, and all you see are the really big shapes and the big values, and that helps you to, simplify it a little bit and get a better grasp of the basics when you draw it. And then when you're going in to add the details, then you can start looking a little closer at the subtle nuances and whatever. But you don't have to, when you're first getting started with your drawing, you want to stay with the big shapes and the big values. It's kind of got a rough texture to the contour of his robe here. Another trick I use a lot with hair, especially this kind of hair, is to make sure you get layers in front of other layers, and you see anywhere you have like a little gap, maybe between a couple of strands, you can indicate that there's hair behind it going in another direction with just these little kind of squiggly lines that just kind of add in a little bit of texture to the hair, and also creates a layery sort of a look. And then it just adds to the dimension, the quality. Sorry, I got a sharper pencil again here. Let's wrap up this hand, and then we'll call it a day here. I think I had a hand that, I can tell they did a hand solo recently. Not being too particular with the sword and the staff here. Just getting the basics. When Mad did the Lord of the Rings movie parodies, there were only 2 movie parody franchises or movies that I requested that I would like to do. One was Batman. When they had the first Christopher Nolan Batman movie came out, I called Sam Viviano, or wrote him, and said I'd really like to do the art for the Batman movie. I'm a huge Batman fan, and I think I sent him a picture of me at about 4 years old in a Batman suit, or 3 years old maybe in a Batman suit. One of those Sears ones or whatever with the plastic face and but it was a cloth outfit that had a hood with little bat ears on it. I think my mom made it for me, actually. And then I sent another picture of me in my Batman suit that I've got in my studio here. That's a movie quality prop replica of the Val Kilmer Panther suit, as it's called, from Batman Forever. Not the weird sonar one, but the Panther one. And I said, so here's me at age 3, and here's me at age, I don't know what I was, 33 maybe. 30 years later, can't fit into that other Batman suit anymore, but this one is my new one. And, you know, it's like, yeah, I'm pretty serious about Batman. So, and they said, okay. So I got to do all the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, Batman versus Superman as well. And then I also asked if I could do the Lord of the Rings, and that one they didn't give to me. That one they gave to Herman Mejia. And, you know, in retrospect, they made exactly the right decision. I mean, Herman's style is, he's good at everything, of course. I mean, his stuff is incredible, but the fantasy stuff was just over the top that he was able to do. And all the parodies that he did for the Lord of the Rings movies were just absolutely stunning. And so I bow to that decision, because I would have made it myself had I, you know, really taken a look at what Herman could do. But at the time, I was disappointed. I would have liked to have done it. But then I ended up doing all the Hobbit movies, because Herman had sort of moved on from Mad by then. They weren't as much fun to do, but still, you know, kind of the Lord of the Rings, Tolkien world. So I did all 3 Hobbit movies, and so those were fun. And all right, so I think, you know, we're pretty good here. That's not bad. So okay, that's it for another week. I'm going to be at New York Comic Con this weekend, so if anybody's going to be there, come by the booth and say hi. I've got a special free gift for anybody who comes up and says, hey, I'm a subscriber of the Ink Stained Wretch. So come up and tell me that you are. You'll get your little free gift, and come by and say hi no matter what. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.